IVM.
I think it's very important to create a good infrastructure for the restaurant. The right infrastructure, the right back end is today very important to give you a great front end product. The right equipment, choice of equipment, because the chefs today are well trained. They also are well traveled. You give them the right product. If you're going to give Sachin Tendulkar a bat made by, uh, you know, uh, Kashmir,
Whatever,
sports
XYZ,
shop, yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
he's not going to be able to hit a six,
yeah.
correct? So the right equipment is very important to deliver a great product.
So, I mean, I'm looking at an operating margin of what, 20% or even, I don't know.
20% would be great. I mean,
Okay.
somebody would jump at that model right now.
Wow, okay.
And that also means 20% means you probably have an ROI of about, if you have invested the right amount of money, an ROI of about 24 months to 30 months,
yeah.
which is a great model because you usually have a leave and license agreement for 5 plus 5 years. So, but I can say not many achieve that. People need to understand that the game is actually longer than 3 years. You don't start making money on day one. And that's where people go wrong when they look at this business.
Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter. And on today's episode, our next in the series of how businesses work, Prashant Chaudhri, and the tough and competitive business of restaurants. We're talking to the owner of popular places in Mumbai like Mangi Ferra, Chin Chu, Tru Tramm Trunk, and much more. If you've been to any of these places, here's the man responsible for it. Prashant, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Thanks, Anupam. Glad to be here.
Yeah, let's start with your journey. I mean, first an intro. A lot of our listeners, viewers, even me, when we go to restaurants, we don't know the people behind the scene. We're just so into the whole eating and the experience. Here you are. Let's just talk about that.
Well, starting with the fact that, back in 2004 is when this journey started. It was a restaurant called Mangi Ferra where we started making the restaurant and didn't even know what was going to be the menu card of the restaurant. And you go out there, you go to other restaurants, you find a good chef, you speak to him, you take your chances, and you open a restaurant. And if the product back in those days, it was not about it wasn't about people who came back from degrees from hospitality industries as much as people who were passionate about the business. And I think that's where it all came out. And hospitality coming from the heart, a keen interest in food or an outgoing person, it turned out to be a successful venture, and we never looked back, ever since.
Talking of degrees, you're someone with a finance and marketing background.
Marketing background, yes, but I don't
you-
think I have used any of it in any businesses.
But did you wake up one fine day and say that you want to do restaurants, or how did
No,
that?
actually, I went to study hotel management in the US, and then I changed my major to finance and marketing, and then got back into working part time in restaurants and cafeterias, from the dishwasher to the delivery boy and the whole thing. And it was just when I was a waiter is when this whole interest, kicked in, where you are always looking after guests, talking to people, interacting, and putting a smile on people's faces. And just got back home and thought that I should give my hand a try to opening one such beautiful, little, nice restaurant.
And there you were, 2014 till, of course, March 2020, when the pandemic and the lockdown hit us. Restaurants were among the worst hit. How did you
Of
guys?
course. So I've lost quite a few. Um, it's been extremely difficult to survive because the whole format of restaurants, the format of marketing the restaurants, everything changed post pandemic. Some of these restaurants that are made today are a lot more. They became Instagrammable. The food, the presentation became Instagrammable, and because everything was a visual effect, even the restaurants and the interiors had to be lifted up. They had to be more engaging. They had to have a little story to it. So the ones that reopened post pandemic, it was difficult to survive, and they carried with them a lot of baggage, a baggage of a lot of liabilities, with their rents and their salaries and their outstanding payments. So it was difficult for the older ones to survive, whereas the newer ones found, it was a boom for them because people went out in hordes, and the new restaurants were obviously more refreshing. So they did really, really well. So while we lost a few, we've retained a few, and of course, it's part of the journey.
So I want to understand this, right? Because a lot of us today, when we go to a restaurant, we like the look and the feel, and the food is among them. At one point of time, it used to be only the food. Now it's become look, feel. So there's obviously a lot of creativity involved in a restaurant, trying to be different, colors, menu. How do you square that, what I would say, creativity part with the actual business part? The nuts and bolts of revenue, costs, expenditures, profits and all.
See, it's like any other business. I think you need to get your economic model correct. For example, I mean, if you budget a restaurant at, to make it in 3 crores, and it's a project that you're doing in a rental model. So if you cross that budget, if you cross the budgets on your manpower, if you cross the budgets on your food costs and liquor costs, it sends the entire economic model for a toss. It puts your entire ROI for a toss. And then obviously the business doesn't make sense. So, but at the same time, so that's one part of it.
Sure.
The other part is the product itself.
Yeah.
If the product is good and it differentiates itself from its competition, and it's unique and it's consistent, of course, the other factors being constant, which is service and ambiance and hospitality. If you get both of them right, it's going to be the ideal scenario.
Yeah.
But very rarely do you see that coming across.
So how does the process start? What I'm trying to understand is that you've got a price of what you're offering and you've got a quality of what you're offering. So if I'm someone who wants to start a restaurant, I'm assuming that the first part is location.
Correct.
Where you are, what is the gentry, what is the catchment area, what is the specific food? Am I, is that how it
You're
works?
absolutely correct.
And then designing the menu. So what is that process like?
So there are two ways to go about it. One is that there is a chef, and maybe he identifies a product or he identifies a cuisine which is lacking in the market, and he wants to do that product. Then he goes around finding a location that is suitable for that product.
Nice.
So that's one way of looking at it. Whether it's a QSR, whether it's a casual dining restaurant, whether it's a fine dining restaurant. So he needs to understand his target audience, where is it going to be available for him for the product that he wants to create. So that is one way of looking at it. The other is, some people want to open a restaurant, they haven't, they find a good location, they find a great location. Then you study the competition around that location. You see what are the parameters that control or that you are dependent on in terms of resources, money, staffing, your abilities, and you find a product that is suitable for that location. So I've done both, where you have a brand, existing brand, and you want to expand. So now you're going to go around finding locations that's suitable for your brand. And then there are times when you find a location, a great location, but you need to come up with a new concept for it. So
okay, let's say that one of our listeners or viewers is looking at this, hearing this, and now he wants to know what's the crack team that I start with. I need an A team, right? It's obvious that one person can't do everything.
Correct.
So who are, like you just mentioned, chef, who I assume is like the central guy to start from. The chef obviously is not someone who handles profit and loss, is also not the one who handles
Correct.
the look and feel.
Correct.
What's your team like?
So, I come from where, our ground roots, where we learned was from the absolute, at the brick level, when we start building it. So if you don't have that background, you are always going to be dependent on an architect, on consultants, on chefs, where they might experiment at your cost. So you need to definitely get the right people on board. It starts with, there are different states have different laws. So you need to get the right person on board for licensing, understanding the location, whether it is going to be legally viable to open what you want to open. There are a lot of restrictions sometimes. Sometimes people pick rooftop places and then they fall flat on their faces. They don't have a backdoor entry. So sometimes you don't have the knowledge for licensing. Similarly, if you are a person who wants to run the restaurant for long, I think it's very important to create a good infrastructure for the restaurant. The right infrastructure, the right back end is today very important to give you a great front end product. The right equipment, choice of equipment, because the chefs today are well trained. They also are well traveled. You give them the right product. If you're going to give Sachin Tendulkar a bat made by, Kashmir,
Whatever,
sports
XYZ,
shop,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
he's not going to be able to hit a six,
Yeah.
correct? So the right equipment is very important to deliver a great product. And then you have a designer where you work backwards with and try to keep a project within its cost, within its limits. So, it all starts from ground level where you start with a great infrastructure. You run a maintenance free restaurant. You run a restaurant which is going to be hygienically, up to standards and which will be able to deliver a consistent product all the time.
And you need someone with big bucks out there. Assuming you don't have it yourself, there are investors who specialize in this. So how does that work?
These days, of course, the kind of numbers that we are seeing in bigger projects, they have lured in a lot of investors. A lot of industrialist families are, pumping in money, investing huge amounts of money in ex-restaurateurs or ex-chefs or talented people today. Talent across industries is finding investors. So, yes, there are a lot of people out there who are putting in on the money.
Okay.
Because it's becoming more and more difficult for a mid-level entrepreneur to put in that kind of money since it's a very high-risk business.
Can we put some numbers out here?
I would say a good premium casual dining restaurant of 2,500 square feet would cost anywhere between 2 and 2.5 crores.
Wow.
And it's a high-risk, high-return business, just like the movies. If it doesn't work, it's not going to work for 3 months. And then you're fighting to lift a dead elephant, which is a really tough job to do. So, and if it works, the returns are great as well. So, there are as many opening and then there are as many shutting down as well.
You mentioned 3 categories: QSR, casual, and fine dine, right? Or
Correct.
luxury, or whatever.
And then, of course, within them, there are the foods and the food-oriented and the bar-oriented.
But I'm saying that with an outlay or a capital expenditure number of about 2.5 or 3 crores, you can have a reasonably good thing here.
I think it should be a very good-looking restaurant.
Okay. Now coming to the more nitty-gritty part, the tough part, the costs. I want to understand what are the large costs out there. Typically, I would assume I'll start with rent, let's say.
Yeah, that's
through.
really gone through the
So
roof
if I look
these
at
days.
a pie of 100 rupees, how much is rent, how much is salaries, how much is everything else?
So there are 2 things that are really burdening the industry today, actually 3 now. The rents, of course, the real estate has really shot up. There is only so much available. The ground floor areas are limited. We are only growing vertically taller. So the supply for restaurants is very limited and the demand is very high now. So the rents have gone through the roof. They usually, once upon a time, we used to budget around 10% of our revenues towards rent. And today it could be 15, 16, 17% because you may not really catch up with your revenues, to justify that rent. The other thing is salaries. Because again, the number of restaurants that are opening, we don't have that much of supply of quality staff, educated staff. So the salaries have gone through the roof. Food cost and inflation, as you know, is always increasing. Electricity has gone up. Gas has gone up. And what has really burdened it is these aggregators who have come into the market, and their discount schemes and commission schemes have just taken away a huge piece of that pie and shrunk the whole model down now. So it's become even more riskier, I feel.
Wow. So, I'm looking at an operating margin of what, 20% or even
20% would be great. Somebody would jump at that model right now.
Wow. Okay.
And that also means 20% means you probably have an ROI of about, if you have invested the right amount of money, an ROI of about 24 months to 30 months, which is a great model because you usually have a leave and license agreement for 5 plus 5 years. So, but I can say not many achieve that.
Are landlords becoming more sensitive in terms of having rev shares instead of rents?
They're not sensitive. They're becoming smarter, I would say, because especially when they get a good brand on board. So they know the brand is going to clock the kind of revenues and they want a piece of a pie of that as well. A lot of the restaurateurs play safe and say that, we will rather have a lower minimum guarantee and give you a piece of the revenue. So they'll lock the revenue rev share model at about 11% or 12%. I come from the other philosophy. I like to keep the upside for the hard work that I put in.
Yeah.
So I will always go in for a flat rate.
Flat,
That's
yeah.
my personal way of working, because when I put in that kind of hard work and my own money, of course, I would not want to share that. In case I ever clock the numbers that I project.
Cuisines and formats, does that make a difference?
Yes, they do. Some are risky, some are really safe. Uh, Traditionally, you would see every time there is a good new product that comes down in the market, they carry a little risk in terms of acceptance. The moment that acceptance is there and established, then it's easier and safer for the others to follow that format, and they will look at replicating that model in their menus and just make cosmetic changes to the names and titles. But there are people out there now who are willing to take the risk,
Yeah.
come up with newer products. Now we are seeing influx of Mexican cuisines. There are Peruvian cuisines that are coming out. There are other fusion cuisines that are coming out. So people are coming up with creative ideas today, which is good to see.
Yeah. I want to move now to the top line part, the revenue part, right? What I want to understand is like from day zero or day one of the restaurant opening. Actually, let's talk about how revenues move in cycles. Say from day one, is there a stability period, then a steady state? Is there weekdays versus weekends? Is demand high in peak seasons like, year end and festivals? How does that work?
So, of course, there is a high season and a low season, like they are in hotels. We go through monsoons, we go through festivals. So, if there is a restaurant that serves non-veg food as well, and has a focus on the bar, so there are festivals like Ganpati, and then Shraddh, and then Navratri, and then monsoons, and then holidays and exam times. So they do see a dip in the business. It could be about 10 to 15%. These are factors are beyond your control.
Obviously.
And then in the season time, people go out more, they celebrate more, they tend to spend more. There are more NRIs that visit the country, visiting their families. So there is a different mood in the air, and they spend a little more. So you see an upside of 15 to 20%. In terms of when you start a restaurant and you have a budget of, let's say, 2.5 crores, where I think people go wrong is they make a beautiful looking restaurant, but they forget to buy the insurance for that restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
The insurance is the working capital,
Wow.
what you require to sustain that restaurant during the gestation period, that period of 2-3 months which it takes for you to achieve the target that you had set out to achieve. And you need to pay those fixed expenses, the salaries and the rents. And you need to give it the boost it requires, the vitamins it requires, which is, like you said today, all the launches. You need to give it. You need to get a video content curator on board. You need to have a digital marketing agency on board. You need to get a PR agency on board. You need to have a team of influencers on board. So all these carry costs with you, and we all forget to account for that, and that always puts negative pressure in your cash flows.
Yeah.
And the moment negative pressure starts coming in, then it affects the operations. Then some things would be available. You'll not have sufficient money for marketing, and you will always cut corners. And that eventually affects the result of what the restaurant is going to give you.
Yeah. Influencers. Like I remember 20, 30 years ago, it used to be reviews in magazines, newspapers.
It was
Somebody's
Bombay
been-
Times. 20 years ago,
It was Bombay
I
Times.
remember opening a restaurant, which was a small cafe in Khar called Cafe Mangi, and it had a capacity of about 60 or 70 people, and I had a guest list of 400 people. So
Okay.
we did actually about 5 parties, and the amount of celebrities that had attended those parties were so many that Bombay Times had, it was they would give you the coverage free if the celebrities were there, of course,
Wow,
were meant
okay.
to be covered.
Yeah.
And it almost gave us half or a 3/4 page on page 3. And that was enough to launch a restaurant. I mean, the next weekend would be a full house.
Yeah.
But today, nobody picks up a Bombay Times. Today, it's about, who's the influencer,
Correct.
how many followers they have,
Yeah.
and of course, celebrity quotient is very high because the celebrities have a great following. So it's become a different business. I think while you have the money to employ or deploy agencies, but you also need to have a good network today
Yeah.
for premium dining restaurants and fine dining restaurants, because you need to be able to pull in that kind of crowd to give you that coverage and take photographs and selfies and give you a post and a review. So you're dependent in a certain way, I think.
Sure. Do restaurants have a life cycle in the sense that you've got something that opens, goes through its natural life cycle phase? A place like Bombay, especially the western suburbs, is notorious. I mean, the life cycle there is like almost non-existent. And then again, you've got Mangi Ferras, places that people
Correct.
just go to, irrespective. That name is just there in the head. Ki weekend aa gaya, yaar, kahan jana hai? I don't want to think. I just want to go to a place that I know that's very familiar. Not too many of them, by the way. It's just
Correct.
a handful of them. So, what does the life cycle in a restaurant look like?
Like I said, when your product is strong, it becomes a little timeless piece. You always will deliver. You want to go to places where you're comfortable. You know that you will experience, your experience will not change every time. You will get the same product on the table each time. Even with interiors, there are some interiors as well in restaurants, and I can remember Indigo once upon a time. It was a timeless piece. You never got bored of seeing that
Ever,
place.
yeah.
So the same thing happens with food, but when you over fusionize things, when people can't remember something, it's like movies. Today, when you go to a movie, you come out of the theater, you can't remember the song. And then there are songs of the older movies which carry great lyrics,
Yeah.
and that's why you remember them. So the life cycle earlier used to be much longer for products like this. Today, the competition is high. People want to visit newer places. They want to take pictures more than they want to eat the food sometimes. The first thing you do when a plate comes on your table is an Instagram picture. So everybody wants to clutter or fill up their Instagram account. And that's why the loyalty factor is now short-lived. So I think it's become tricky now that how long this restaurant will last, it's difficult to say.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, under the hood, stuff like supply chain, stuff like food, getting your vegetables and everything in place. Is there a system to this? Any hacks, any tips out there that you feel?
There are it's a much better supply chain for sure, and vendors are delivering quality products today. They are certified. They are FSSAI certified.
Yeah.
You have access to quality ingredients from around the world, and that's how you can create cuisines like Peruvian and Pan Asian and Korean and Japanese. So it's a good time to experiment. You're always going to be having good quality products and ingredients available to you. The only thing is they come at a cost, and that cost has shaken up the model a little bit.
Okay. Now let's kind of just bring all of this together, pull it in, and make this into some kind of a checklist or advice that you'd want to give someone who's listening to our episode out here. Let's start with the kind of people that he needs. Let's say that our listener is someone who feels very passionately about food, about creating an experience for people to come in, right? What would you tell him? Like, I don't know.
I would just take a step back, and the first question I ask is, what do you want to achieve out of this restaurant?
Nice. Why are you doing this?
What is the purpose of doing this? There are people with a lot of money. Sometimes they just want to do this to get some sort of an identity, or they need to have a place where they can entertain people. They may be running big business houses. You could be a great stockbroker earning 10 crores a month, but you don't have an identity somewhere. And now you have a great house, you have a big car, but you want to be known in the circle. So then the perspective changes completely. Now coming back to your question, if you want to open a restaurant, you need to obviously study. You need to know if this money is not there with you, is it going to affect your life? Because it is a high-risk business. If you're still going to go ahead with it, you need to study. You need to work somewhere, I would suggest. You need to understand the model, get the right professionals on board, and understand and look at it as a business. Your capital that you infuse gets infused within 3 months and 4 months of making it. You take that same capital out in the first 3 years. You're not taking profit out. So when you say that you're making 10 lakhs a month or 20 lakhs a month, you're actually removing your capital in the beginning. So I think people need to understand that the game is actually longer than 3 years. You don't start making money on day one. And that's where people go wrong when they look at this business.
Yeah. What are the most common mistakes that you see people making?
Working capital, like I said, money kept aside for marketing and boosting it. Keeping in mind, keeping money aside for contingencies, keeping money aside for contingencies with your staff. Eventually, every year, 2 years, you carry with you a team. There could be problems. Today, Mumbai city has almost every lane and every road dug up in the suburbs. It has dropped the business down by 30% because the accessibility is restricted.
Is that right?
100%.
Wow.
Since January, I'm pretty sure I'm running 6 restaurants in suburbs, and we are seeing a drop of 30%.
Just because people can't reach there because the place
There's
is
no
dug
accessibility.
and that's a big thing. People would just say that.
Of course, but we can't.
Okay.
Mumbai is upgrading, and the municipal corporation has to coordinate with 6 different departments: stormwater, electrical, gas pipelines, and stuff. So it is just it's a mess. So you need to be prepared for this, and you need to always you need to carry that risk element with you in your month to month.
Okay. So, in investing, there are some ways of how to start investing. For example, when I hear people, the guests who come on my show, start with an index fund, start with an SIP before jumping into, becoming active and saying that, okay, I have 5 stocks, I will double, triple. Is there something similar that you would recommend to young people who want to start off their career in this line? Maybe start off with this, feel your way, then grow? Or is it like...
So, I remember when I started out and I was, taking advice from a few people. So there are different cuisines that carry different food costs. I mean, like for example, in Chinese food, you take a chicken, you boil it and you get stock out of it. You use the good chicken for good dishes, you use the bad chicken for fried, the crumbs for the fried rice. So you utilize the whole chicken, so the food cost is a little low. Besides that, we as Indians, we have certain palates for certain kinds of cuisines, and you can't go wrong with them, starting with Indian, Chinese, and Italian. You can't go wrong with these things.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's obviously safer to play with these. Italian food carries a little higher food cost. Chinese food cost is lower. Indian food, and then again, is this model going to be dependent on deliveries or dine-in?
Oh yeah, that's a big one, right?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
So if it's going to be deliveries, then Italian food is not suitable because in the house, you want to share the meal. So Indian food and Chinese food is most acceptable in the house, where you can share a portion of a dal or a chicken,
or egg fried rice or whatever.
Whatever
it is.
So I think you need to. You need to start thinking from step one, which is how much of a risk you want to take. We play it safe, open a smaller space, understand the economics, see the working of it, see how the numbers fall through, sustain the model for a year. Today, when you talk to people, everybody wants to open. Their dream starts with 6 restaurants. I'm going to open a brand and I'm going to launch it all over Bombay. And the other mistake that everybody makes is, you see a successful restaurant and everybody says, "Hame Chin Chu bana ke do." And today, anybody who has crores and crores of rupees has only one request to a consultant: make me a bastion.
Wow.
Now, there can be only one bastion in Bombay. You can't. Everybody can't make a bastion. Everybody can't make an indigo. Everybody can't make a Chin Chu. So, and every market is not the same. In Bombay, the market is different from Colaba to Lower Parel to Bandra to Andheri to Malad.
Keeps changing every 5 kilometers.
Correct. It's not necessary that a Chin Chu that will working in Juhu may work in Lower Parel or may work in Borivali. So
what are your portfolio brands? Just for our listeners, maybe because you're mentioning quite a few.
So I have opened quite a few.
Yep.
I have taken risks. Yep. I have tried to curate brands which have been unique. Sometimes I've fallen flat on my face, but I believe unless you try, you won't know. But not everybody should follow that route or that philosophy. So the brands, have been Mangi Ferra, and then Cafe Mangi, and then we have done Fable, which is an all-day cafe.
I love that, man. The one in Juhu.
The one in
Oh my
Juhu.
God, that is like
Chin
really,
Chu
yeah.
was one of the first Pan-Asian restaurants in Bombay 7 years ago. Highly decorated with a lot of awards. We opened a bar called Tru Tramm Trunk, which represented the tipples across the different states that are available using the natural ingredients, and that became a huge hit. We opened an Indian restaurant called +91, based on the country code, where we served the classics from different states of the country. We opened a cafe called Bougainvillea. It was a nice garden restaurant in Lower Parel. So yeah, these are some of the brands.
Prashant, what is the unglamorous part of this business? A lot of people, especially me, we just go in there, have an experience, enjoy ourselves, pay the bill, go back, and that's it, we are done. But for someone who's sitting there running this business day in, day out, month after month, year after year, there's a lot of unglamorous and tough stuff that happens. Tell us about that.
So, I wouldn't want to be pessimistic to my listeners, but yes, I need them to be aware of the fact that, we put in a lot of hard work. We make a beautiful looking restaurant. We put together a great team. We train them. We launch it. And the day the curtains rise, you have to understand the fact that nothing is in your control.
Wow.
So the worst part of this business is there are 99 things that can go against you. And the only thing that goes in your favor is a positive comment card. You're dependent on the 50 people out there who are working. It's a business of 24 hours a day, 30 days a month. You're dependent on the guests in front of you. You're dependent on the reviews they give you. You're dependent on the way media writes about you. You're dependent on there could be a day where a computer could crash, the air conditioning can fail, a valet can bang somebody's car.
Ooh.
There could be a cockroach at the end of the day. We have them in our houses. So there could be a cockroach that crawled up a table. And in today's time and age with the digital marketing world, it can go viral so easily that it can destroy you. You don't get a second chance. You could have served great food for 3 years of your life, and that to that same guest, that one day that something can go wrong, and you will see him, blow his top and just pull you down and humiliate you and demolish you literally. So it's a very unforgiving business from that perspective. So you need to be on your toes all the time, for sure. If you are getting into this business, you need to know this.
Yeah. I'm hoping that people who are listening, I personally give a restaurant at least 3 tries. Okay.
That's very kind.
No,
That's
am because
kind.
if I'm going for the first time, unless it's a disaster from start to finish, which honestly hasn't happened. Okay, it's a little bit here and there is fine.
But just think about it. Those same chefs who have the entire team has no loyalty. They would leave you at the snap of a finger.
Yeah.
How do you maintain the consistency? How do you know how the guests are being spoken to? You can't. It's not mechanical. At the end of the day, it's a human business. So the dependency on people, it's a people-dependent business. And you are helpless after a point.
Yeah.
So opening a restaurant is one thing and running it is something else.
Crazy, yeah. I don't know if you've seen The Bear. There's a series on Hotstar. Do watch it. It's about a restaurant, I think, in Chicago or somewhere, and it's just mental. That's when I saw that, that food that comes to your table is a finished product behind which goes a process that you would not imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Right from the guy who's cutting the vegetable to the guy who's serving you.
It's a team.
Yeah.
It's actually a play that goes on, and everybody's playing a role out there.
Yeah.
So,
and I wish that people would take that a little bit more seriously. Give it more tries.
Give it a second chance at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay. Second question is on celebrities. How important are they in pushing the needle? And I'm asking you because I know that Mangi Ferra, in its day, even today, I hope, was very popular with a lot of the celebrities. So
Correct.
you just tell us about that aspect.
It definitely, it pushes accelerates the your business and your revenue model, because they do have a great influence on public. The moment you have one coming in and one post like this, and all of a sudden it goes viral. I remember an instant. So I had a beautiful restaurant called Mangi Ferra. So when the initial leave and license term expired, we had to surrender it. When we got back that same property after a couple of years, we opened a restaurant called +91. Now it didn't do that well, but we were still dragging that brand. And then one fine day, I had our most favorite client, Mr. Sachin Tendulkar.
Wow.
Who
Oh,
used to
amazing.
visit, who was given us the rating of the best pizza in the country.
Oof.
And he called me up saying, is Mangi Ferra still open? And this was just about 5 years ago, pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I can't believe it. After 8 years, if he's remembering a restaurant which he had visited long time ago for a pizza, and there are no shortage of good pizzas in the city, and we all of a sudden decided, okay, let's convert Plus 91 back into a Mangi Ferra, and that's how we reopened Mangi Ferra 5 years ago. So, but yes, the celebrity quotient is very important. They give you a lot of visibility, instant visibility.
How I'm sure that this business has highs and lows.
Yeah.
Right? What are the lows? I want people to just get a reality check out here. And how did you go through that and sustain the highs that have brought you to where you are today?
The lows are as simple as this: when you don't have money to survive, and
Okay.
when you don't get support from
Can't
a
get more
landlord.
real than that, yeah.
I mean, it becomes a well. When you pumped in that kind of money, it's hard to leave that, especially when you have curated and created that baby. So it just becomes a well, and it keeps sucking you in. It's really hard to leave it, but at times you need to have a pragmatic approach, and you need to just say, it's over is over,
Yeah.
and you need to move on. You try to hold on to things, it wipes you out completely. We've seen moments, so I've been part where I've created a brand called Cafe Mangi, and I had collaborated with a corporate company. So I have worked when I had an individual restaurant called Mangi Ferra. Then I worked in a corporate environment. We tried to corporatize the business of hospitality. And then we've come back to a little mid approach where I have investment funding as well, but at the same time, we operated in a private way with a lot of systems and processes. So, there again, there is that little element where there is a fine line of how much systems and processes you want to put in, because they carry cost.
Yeah.
They carry with it a manpower cost to it, and it becomes more and more tedious.
What are the highs like? Like stuff that you want to like.
Oh,
you're really
the highs
proud
are
of,
amazing. You meet amazing people,
Yeah.
of course. Everybody wants to know who you are. It depends on the kind of restaurant you have, and it's a high. It's a great feeling because it's one of the professions which is public.
Yeah.
So, there is a lot of visibility out there in the market. People talk about it. And now, like I said, there is Instagram, there are reels, and you make videos. And everybody's talking about you. So obviously it's a great high. You may have created something which is not making money, but at the same time, you're larger than life.
And somewhere you're putting food on the table. Let's
Correct.
say a family comes in and
Oh, yeah,
leaves
it's
with, I think that is
for
that counts
me,
for
it's the
something.
greatest feeling. I mean, I love meeting people. For me, entertaining, feeding people, recommending the right dish. I take a great pride in, going out there and serving someone. For me, if I get the opportunity, I would like to go and visit every table in every restaurant on mine. It's
Amazing.
amazing to go and talk to people.
Yeah.
You get to learn so much, you get to see so much, and it's an interesting experience.
Well, this is after 20 years in the business, so people who are listening
Yeah,
in
but
need
that's
to know it's a
probably why I'm
grind.
still
Yeah,
in the business, because I'm doing this out of passion.
Yeah.
It's not been the numbers as much, and maybe the numbers are not that great, to support my statement either, or to support my statement, but it's really the passion.
Okay. Now, in my other episodes that I do with people who are from, the finance industry, I usually ask them for their favorite book. I'm going to ask you your favorite restaurants. Give us a list.
Oh,
Yeah?
favorite
Can
restaurants.
go on and on.
Yeah, I can go on.
Let's just go with the top 3 or the top 5.
I still go to Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
I
Sizzlers.
I still go to Kobe. I've been going there for 40 years.
This is the original one in town?
We used to go there, but I think the
The
whole team has
traffic,
changed
okay.
there. So the Bandra one is closer to the original product. There is the Maruti Cafe in Matunga. Then there is Dakshinayan is great. I think the best South Indian food in
Jew
Bombay.
and Malabaril, yeah.
Yeah,
Love that.
Really
love
good. Americano is fantastic food.
yeah.
La Loca Maria has got great food. These are, of course, chef-oriented restaurants, so they're still serving fantastic food. And
Anything in the 5 stars that you just like? For me, the 5 stars is, I don't go there very often.
I
but
really have never been a fan of it, I think, because,
Huh.
their menu cards are influenced by a lot of expat chefs.
Yeah.
And I think they do not, they don't really adapt it to the Indian palate as much, and tweak that model. So I can't point a restaurant in
Look
a
at the
five-star
other
hotel.
extreme street food.
Oh, I love eating. So there used to be Sadanand's Vada Pav Gajanan's Vada Pav in Thane, and I love Vada Pav and I love Pani Puri. So these are two of my products which I eat almost 3 days or 4 days a week. And I would stop the car anywhere and pick up a Pani Puri just to taste the Pani.
Nice.
Yeah, so
It's good to hear that, because I find a lot of people become snobs. I will not have this, I will not have that. I will
Oh,
not.
no,
And with
no.
street food, I'm like, dude, what do you think about that?
I'm a typical Punjabi. When I wake up in the morning, I'm having breakfast and discussing lunch. When I'm having lunch, I'm discussing dinner.
Okay.
And when I'm nervous, I think about food. When I'm angry, I want to eat. So for me, it is that's why I think I'm in this business.
Yeah.
It's all about I live to eat.
Alcobev. Bars, cocktails, anything?
Like I said, I'm Punjabi, so it's been a long history. And yes, I love my drinks. And खाना पीना और खिलाना और पिलाना हमारे ज़हन में है.
I mean, for someone who's got that menu at Tru Tramm Trunk, it's obvious that you know how to put a product out there. But yeah, that's it. That is a wrap, folks, on this episode of Paisa Vaisa. My guest is Restaurateur. I don't know how to pronounce that. Please help me.
Restaurateur.
Prashant Chaudhri, owner of many brands, like he said. Prashant, thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you.
IVM